Congressman Glenn Grothman from Wisconsin just asked three AI executives the simplest possible question. Can you give me even one example of a bad thing that happened because there wasn't enough human supervision over AI? And all three dodged, one after another, each one saying their own company has never had a problem, none willing to name a single case from anywhere else in the industry. And Grothman kept pushing. He said, no examples, not even one, scare stories, anybody? And finally, a fourth witness, a former OSHA official, gave the one real answer. A worker in Ohio was working alongside a robotics device in a manufacturing plant. Maintenance had been done on the device. Its base had been moved, but nobody reprogrammed it. The device was still operating as if it hadn't been moved, and it crushed the worker against a wall, and he was killed. And the lesson the former OSHA official drew from that death wasn't just that humans need to be in the loop, it was that humans can be in the loop and still be complacent. Being technically in charge isn't enough. You have to be actively engaged in engineering out failure. So this week, Congressman Glenn Grothman questioned AI executives about human oversight in workplace AI, and finally got a real answer about what happens when that oversight fails. Take a look at this, and I'll give you my breakdown at the end.
Thank you. Mr. Hopland, a common concern about AI is that it could make important decisions without human input. In your written testimony, you emphasize the importance of human judgment in the decision-making process. How should human judgment be included in workplace safety monitoring and decision-making?
Thank you for the question, and it's very important to have a human in the loop through the entire process. And as we're designing our safety systems using AI, we ensure that that's the case. It starts with the architecture. And it starts with the common safety practices that we've established over many years. And so we'll work with the workforce and with the leaders there to talk about, well, what sort of AI technology can we use to enhance those already existing procedures and processes? And so it's designed with humans involved from the beginning. And then as the AI is deployed and it's giving us data or insights or ideas, the humans are ultimately making the decisions about what we're going to do with that data information. So having humans involved in the entire loop is important in how we deploy it in distribution centers.
Can you give me an example of a bad thing that would happen if humans weren't in the loop?
Well, a lot of bad things could happen if humans weren't in a loop, but we're not deploying agentic AI that's making its own decisions. The AI in our distribution centers can't override the humans, and so we have that loop system where humans are in charge.
Yeah, you can't give me an example. Well, okay.
Well, we don't deploy it that way.
Okay. Mr. Land, one of the biggest concerns I have over adopting this innovative technology is the upfront capital needed, leaving small and mid-sized businesses behind the curve. Will these technologies become more affordable and available over time, you think?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. Yeah, I absolutely think so. There's a set of costs driving this. One is, of course, the hardware cost that's likely to come down over time. There is cloud cost, compute to deploy the AI. That is rapidly decreasing right now, probably about a factor of 10 per year. So yeah, this will absolutely come down and become more affordable.
Okay. What must happen for technology to become affordable? Is there, other than the fact that this is what always happens with new technology, we should all know that, but they want me to ask, what must happen for technology to become more affordable and available?
I think a set of things, like companies like mine and together with policymakers, we need to enable the market and companies and employees to really embrace this. I think that's a key thing to ensure that this has the impact that we're already seeing. Broad deployment and adoption is a key element.
I'm going to ask the question I asked Mr. Hopland of you. Can you think of bad things that happen if it's too much AI and not enough human?
Yeah, so thank you so much for that question. I agree with Mr. Hopland that human in the loop is absolutely instrumental, and that's also how we do it. And without that, yes, bad things could potentially happen. Now, it's worth noting that in our case, we're not doing self-driving cars or anything like that. We're purely analyzing data, informing employers and employees about that to help them improve and stay safer. We're not taking any actions.
Could you give me an example of a bad thing that has, even you're aware of outside of your own company, that has happened because we have a lack of human supervision over the AI?
Yeah, I don't want to speak to what has happened in other places, but in other company, in my company, I have no examples of that because we are so rigorous in our human in the loop and our monitoring of what the AI does.
Okay, we'll give you the two guys on the right. Do you have any examples, scare stories that you can give us that either your or somebody else's company did not provide human supervision here and a bad thing happened and you thought, geez, how do we let this happen?
I can't think of anything, nor would we ever advocate for AI to be implemented without any type of human oversight. I think it's critical that you have that. Otherwise, you will have errors and you will have problems, and you'll see it more often than
No
not.
examples, not even some. Go ahead.
I can give you an example of a technology causing harm. It was an investigation when I was at OSHA. A worker in Ohio was working in a manufacturing plant. He was working alongside a robotics device. There'd been some maintenance to the robotics device, and its base had been pivoted. It had been trained to work within a certain zone. And unbeknownst to the worker, because the device had been moved and there'd been a failure to reprogram the device, it engaged, it crushed him against a wall, and he was killed. So that's an example of humans being in charge, but also being complacent about ensuring that they are actually actively engaged in engineering out failure.
Thank you, and I guess I'm out of time.
All right, let's talk about what you just heard because Congressman Glenn Grothman just exposed something deeply revealing about the AI industry. He asked a simple question repeatedly. Give me one real example of AI harm from lack of human supervision. And 3 industry executives couldn't or wouldn't answer it. And when a former government safety official finally gave a real answer, it described a worker being killed. That gap between what industry says and what actually happens is exactly why oversight matters. Let me walk you through what Grothman exposed because this is about whether the people building and deploying AI are being honest with Congress about its risks. Grothman started with Mr. Hoplin, a distribution center executive. He referenced Hoplin's written testimony emphasizing human judgment in decision-making, and asked, how should human judgment be included in workplace safety monitoring and decision-making? And Hoplin gave a polished corporate answer, it's very important to have a human in the loop through the entire process. We design our safety systems with humans involved from the beginning. We work with the workforce and leaders to talk about what AI technology can enhance existing procedures. And ultimately, humans make the decisions about what to do with the data. The AI in our distribution centers cannot override the humans. Cannot override the humans. That's the key assurance. The AI gives data and insights. Humans decide what to do. AI can flag a safety hazard. A human decides whether to shut down the line. The AI cannot make that call itself. And Grothman pushed immediately. Can you give me an example of a bad thing that would happen if humans weren't in the loop? And Hoplin said, a lot of bad things could happen if humans weren't in the loop. But we're not deploying agentic AI that makes its own decisions. The AI in our distribution centers can't override the humans, and so we have that loop system where humans are in charge. Notice what just happened. Grothman asked for an example. Hoplin said, a lot of bad things could happen, but gave 0 examples, and then pivoted to talking about how his own company doesn't have this problem. And Grothman called it out directly, you can't give me an example. And Hoplin said, we don't deploy it that way. We don't deploy it that way. That's not an answer to the question. The question wasn't about your company. The question was whether you can give any example of bad things happening when AI lacks human oversight. And Hoplin couldn't or wouldn't answer it. And Grothman turned to Mr. Land, the AI technology company executive. He asked about small and mid-sized businesses being left behind by the upfront costs of AI technology, and Land gave a genuinely useful answer. Hardware costs are likely to come down over time. Cloud compute costs are decreasing, probably by a factor of 10 per year. So yes, this will absolutely become more affordable. Factor of 10 per year. That's an extraordinary rate of cost reduction. If that holds, AI tools that cost $100,000 today will cost $10,000 in a year, $1,000 in 2 years, $100 in 3 years. The economics of AI deployment are moving so fast that small businesses waiting even a few years before adopting may find the technology dramatically more accessible. And Grothman asked what must happen for technology to become more affordable, and then said something revealing, "They want me to ask." Grothman is admitting he's reading from a prepared list of questions, acknowledging that some of what he's asking is scripted by committee staff rather than coming from his own curiosity. That's actually a moment of unusual congressional honesty. Most members read prepared questions without acknowledging they're doing so. Grothman is being transparent about it, and Land answered that broad deployment and adoption is key. The more companies use AI, the more the market drives down prices. And then Grothman asked Land the same question he asked Hoplin: can you think of bad things that happen if there's too much AI and not enough human? And Land said, human in the loop is absolutely instrumental. That's also how we do it. And without that, yes, bad things could potentially happen. Could potentially happen? Not have happened. Could potentially. And then Land explained his company's narrow use case. We're not doing self-driving cars or anything like that. We're purely analyzing data, informing employers and employees about that to help them improve and stay safer. We're not taking any actions. Not taking any actions. That's the key distinction Land is drawing. His AI analyzes data and generates recommendations, but it never acts on those recommendations directly. A human always has to decide what to do with the information. So the risk of AI acting without human oversight doesn't apply to his specific product. But Grothman pushed again. Could you give me an example of a bad thing that has happened in outside your own company because of a lack of human supervision over AI? And Land said, I don't want to speak to what has happened in other places. In my company, I have no examples because we are so rigorous in our human in the loop and our monitoring of what the AI does. I don't want to speak to what has happened in other places. That's a very careful answer. Land knows things have gone wrong elsewhere. He just won't say what they are, and he's hiding behind his own company's record to avoid answering the broader question. And Grothman turned to the remaining witnesses. He said, we'll give you two guys on the right. Do you have any examples, scare stories, that either your or somebody else's company did not provide human supervision and a bad thing happened? Scare stories. Grothman is explicitly asking for scare stories. He wants concrete examples that illustrate what's at stake. And one witness said, I can't think of anything, nor would we ever advocate for AI to be implemented without any type of human oversight. I think it's critical that you have that. Otherwise, you will have errors and you will have problems, and you'll see it more often than not. You will have errors and problems. That witness is acknowledging bad things will happen without oversight, but still can't give a specific example. 3 executives in a row, all unable or unwilling to name a single incident from anywhere in the world where AI, without human oversight, caused harm. And Grothman said, no examples? Not even? And then finally, one witness spoke up, the former OSHA official, and he gave the only honest answer in the entire hearing. He said, I can give you an example of a technology causing harm. It was an investigation when I was at OSHA. A worker in Ohio was working in a manufacturing plant. He was working alongside a robotics device. There had been some maintenance to the robotics device, and its base had been pivoted. It had been trained to work within a certain zone, and unbeknownst to the worker, because the device had been moved and there had been a failure to reprogram the device, it engaged. It crushed him against a wall, and he was killed. Crushed against a wall. Killed. That's what happens when technology operates without proper human oversight. Not a hypothetical, a real death, investigated by OSHA in Ohio at a real manufacturing plant. And the former OSHA official drew a lesson that every AI executive in that room needed to hear. That's an example of humans being in charge, but also being complacent about ensuring that they are actually actively engaged in engineering out failure. Humans being in charge, but being complacent. That's the critical distinction. The humans at that Ohio plant were technically in charge. There was a human in the loop system, but they did maintenance on the robot and didn't reprogram it afterward. They were complacent. They assumed everything was fine, and a worker died. That's the risk that the AI industry's human in the loop talking point glosses over. It's not enough to have a human technically responsible for the system. The human has to be actively, genuinely, consistently engaged in ensuring the system is operating safely. Complacency kills. And in an industry racing to deploy AI faster than anyone fully understands it, complacency is the default setting. Like, subscribe and share this everywhere. Because Congressman Grothman just exposed that 3 AI executives couldn't name a single example of AI causing harm from lack of human oversight. But a former OSHA official described a manufacturing worker in Ohio being crushed to death by a robot whose base had been moved during maintenance without being reprogrammed. The AI industry's human-in-the-loop promise is only as good as human vigilance, and humans are complacent. That's the real risk.